Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast of ZeldaDungeon.net, and this is the video you guys have been waiting for, or at least I think you have. I know I've mentioned it a few times leading up to this. This video is about Phantom Hourglass versus Spirit Tracks. Now, the games were very similar in a lot of ways. I mean, well, basically, Spirit Tracks, of course, since it came out second, was basically using the engine of Phantom Hourglass, the same gameplay and such, and it changed things and expanded on it. Now, a lot of people didn't like Phantom Hourglass. I mean, you guys all know this. People didn't like Phantom Hourglass, but some people did, and they made Spirit Tracks, and a lot of people thought it was better, but some people thought it was worse. So, here's my assessment of the two games, and what I think of the two of them. Alright, let's start with the really obvious changes, the really, everyone, they're really out there in your face stuff, The first, let's start with, the central dungeons. That's the Temple of the Ocean King and the Tower of Spirits. These were the dungeons that you had to go to many times in the game. As you progressed in the game, you had to come back to get some kind of map or, just things like that. And ultimately, the final boss was usually encountered in that area, or at least the way to the final boss in Spirit Tracks' case. Let's start with the Temple of the Ocean King. My thoughts on that is that it got a little frustrating at points, how you had to, keep going through it. However, I felt that they did a very good job of expanding on the dungeon by adding, shortcuts you could do once you had the appropriate items. So I felt they did a very good job of making it so, every time you went through it was a little different. In fact, I actually think it was such good design because you're constantly having to go back through the dungeon to get all kinds of secrets and items you can now get, uncover new routes, get faster times. There was a lot of replay value, but it was also a very good case of great game design because it was just so well designed, all these interweaving networks of paths. And there's a lot of puzzles, and it was an awesome stealth element. I don't know if you like the stealth stuff in the games, but, the Zelda games have always had these stealth elements, and the Temple of the Ocean King, in my opinion, was one of the most well-done versions of this. Now, the Tower of Spirits was a central dungeon of a very similar nature. It even had the phantoms. What's interesting is the stealth element was not nearly as pronounced. It was there, but at the same time, it wasn't focused on as much. And it was mostly what was missing from it was given to the co-op element, where you have two characters, Phantom Zelda and Link. And it added a lot to the puzzles and the stuff. I thought that the Tower of Spirits had some really great puzzles and such. It was quite challenging, in my opinion, much more than the Temple of the Ocean King, in my opinion. You could also now skip all the floors you'd done before. Now, while there are still some items that you can get later and some new things you can get with old items, it wasn't designed so well, such an interweaving, all these different side paths, all these different secrets and stuff. It wasn't done like that. So while it was very cool with all the co-op and the difficulty and the great puzzles, at the same time it wasn't as impressive, in my opinion, because it didn't have the great design. Now, the central dungeon idea irritates a lot of people. It didn't me, but some people just didn't care for either. Now then there's the transportation. Now, Phantom Hourglass's transportation, in my opinion, was sort of like them trying to fix Wind Waker's. Now, a lot of people liked Wind Waker's, but I think they were trying to go with the people who, said they didn't like the Wind Waker sailing, so they made a different kind of sailing, where you just plot a course, and then they made it so there was actually a bunch of different things you could do while on that course. The sea wasn't very big, so, I hear people saying complaints about how long it takes to get places. I didn't feel it did, but that's just me. The islands were bigger, so the transportation wasn't, as weird, you're going a long distance just to go on a little plot of land. You actually had a full area to run around in. So it was very cool. And, you could shoot enemies, you could stop the boat, you could shoot those little jellyfish that float up, and, I just thought it was kind of interesting, And then they did the train in Spirit Tracks. Now, the train is more linear because you have to go on these set paths, and you can kind of set a course, but it's not as important. You can change the speeds, and there's all these, mini games. There's probably more stuff you do on the train in this case. You can capture rabbits, you can shoot enemies, there's the jellyfish are back in some areas. Actually, there's a lot of combat on the train, more so than with the boat, in my opinion. and there's like all these like side quest stuff where you have to carry people along the train. The thing is, I think overall the train was a little more irritating because it was like more sluggish. It was harder to get places. It was more annoying to get places. You were more limited. So I think ultimately I'd have to pick the boat as my favorite of the two. But it seems like the train could have been better if it had just been done more, more well. It's a little like squandered potential a little bit, possibly. All right, let's get into like some of the less really in your face stuff. Let's start with the side quests and the secrets and stuff. In Phantom Hourglass, you had a lot of side quests. There was tons of mini games. There was tons of collectibles. I mean, in addition to the heart containers, which there weren't too many of, you had all these the power gems, courage gems, and wisdom gems. And now these were like collected just as often as like heart pieces would be in any Zelda game. And you just collect so many of them. They're a great collectible. And the thing is that at some point you get a power up from them. You have these shield, beam blade, extra attack power upgrades to your sword. It was very interesting because I love it when you have ways of expanding your moveset or picking power ups. And I thought that was just very great how they implemented that. And they had the treasures to collect, and you just sell them. Maybe that's not a collectible. Well, it is a collectible, but it's not like a side quest item necessarily. Just a way to get money. But and there was the ship parts, and you had to gamble to get them. You could buy them from the shops. I actually thought Phantom Hourglass probably has one of the best economies in the series because you're getting lots of money, but you're constantly spending it. Now, in the Spirit Tracks, they had a lot of collectibles too. They had the rabbits, the postcards. The stamps. Excuse me. They had more treasures. They had the train parts. Excuse me again. There was a lot of things to do and find. Now, I thought actually Spirit Tracks had an even better economy. You're always needing money. You're always spending your money. I love that. I think that it's been a long time since we've had a Zelda game to properly use an economy like that. At the same time, like the collectibles, as I've mentioned before, and I think some other people have, is that a lot of the side quests and stuff, the rewards you can't get them until they're basically useless. Now, that's been done before in the Minish Cap, but that was irritating then, too. It's kind of stupid for you to go through a lot of trouble to get a cool upgrade at the end of a big side quest, and all you get is something that you can't use anymore. There's no point to that. Now, because of these, I think I have to say that Phantom Hourglass had better side quests, because they were all gratifying and, stuff. The one thing I think Spirit Tracks might have excelled at more is the mini-games. There were so much variety. That was just great. Now, the difficulty of the games. Now, Phantom Hourglass was actually really easy, in my opinion. And not the easiest game in the series. There were some tricky parts, but it was very easy. Now, usually I complain a lot about this, but actually for once I wasn't too pissed about it because, in my opinion, there was a lot of creativity, like in the bosses, for example, that I think made up for their lack of challenge a little bit. I would have liked it if they were hard too, but at least they were fun. Now, Spirit Tracks, I went into it thinking it was just going to be about as easy. I was shocked. It's really hard. It's probably one of the hardest Zelda games in recent history, actually. I actually had a lot of challenge getting through some parts. Going on to a little bit with the dungeons and bosses, in Spirit Tracks I had a lot of trouble in certain dungeons, and certain bosses also gave me a lot of trouble. And of course there's a take 'em all on challenge. Phantom Hourglass, in terms of the dungeons were very plain in my opinion. There were some different gimmicks, but a lot of the dungeons felt very similar. The bosses, however, were incredibly creative, and there was a lot of them, of course. Now, in Spirit Tracks, the dungeons, the first one or so is basically what you'd see in Phantom Hourglass. It's an identical kind of dungeon. But after that, they go nuts. There's all these variety of the dungeons, and it was actually awesome. And I love some of the dungeons from the game. And the bosses were really cool. There was a lot of different ones. They were also creative. Maybe not quite as wacky as some of the ones in Phantom Hourglass. Really interesting. But they were still very creative. And they were very hard. So I think in terms of dungeons and bosses, overall, I gotta hand it to Spirit Tracks. Now, the art and music is something that I like, I enjoy in the games. I thought that Phantom Hourglass had some, I heard that the music was bad, but I didn't feel it was, like, terrible. I felt that it worked, but they just didn't have as many songs that blew you away like Zelda usually does. Spirit Tracks, on the other hand, oh my god, the soundtrack was incredible. It was just breathtaking, one of the best in the series, so there's no contest there. Music, Spirit Tracks owns. However, in terms of art, I still say that Spirit Tracks owns, but there were some great moments in Phantom Hourglass art-wise. There were some cool enemy designs, areas, but overall, a lot of things got boring and plain. I mean, even liking the game, I gotta admit, there were some boring parts. So, overall, in terms of variety and art and music, I gotta hand it to Spirit Tracks. Now, the story. Now, this is a tricky one. Phantom Hourglass had, it wasn't the most flashy story. It wasn't the most epic. It was a little more subdued in a way. But, in my opinion, a lot happened in it. I mean, it had the standard plot twist where you, after you get through the first 3 dungeons, you have to go through another 3 and get some new thing, and the enemy is revealed to you. But, at the same time, I felt there was a lot of changing with the story. The characters were constantly changing, and the situations were different, and you were learning more about your characters. It just felt like the plot was constant and moving all the time. Whereas in Spirit Tracks, the story was really cool. There were great characters, great moments, it was epic, it was just awesome story. But it stops after the beginning of the game, and doesn't continue until the end. So the story itself was awesome, the storytelling was actually kind of pathetic. Whereas the story in Phantom Hourglass was pretty good, and the storytelling was amazing. So ultimately, in terms of story, I think Phantom Hourglass kind of kicked the crap out of Spirit Tracks. But I'm almost reluctant to say that because I loved what story was in Spirit Tracks, but it wasn't executed as well. I can't give it that award, Now, compiling all these together, I think they were both very interesting games, very great. I think underrated, both of them were very underrated games. But, I think Phantom Hourglass overall had, better design, it had better quality to it, but Spirit Tracks had better art and variety. It really was a little more exciting, even though it might not have been designed as well. Because of this, I have to say, I mean, this is the verdict now. I bet you want to know what I think. Which I think is better, Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks? I gotta say, I like them both just as much. I can't pick. So, what about you guys? Was that the answer you expected, first of all? And what did you guys think? Which did you like better? Do you agree with my points? Do you agree that they each excel in their own areas? Do you feel that one was just way better? Is it more of a personal preference thing, or do you think it's in terms of the actual construction and quality of the game? Tell me in the comments. I'd really like to hear it. And I guess that's it. So I'll see you guys next time. Later.